Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Today we want to have a look at Garuda Linux and why this might be the best Arch implementation yet. We're going to go ahead and dig in looking at the various things that sets it apart, looking at the very standout features, and a couple little negatives that I've found in the system as well. Thanks for checking out this video. Today, of course, we're going to look at Garuda Linux, and I wanted to go ahead and talk about this one. I looked at this before, and as I've looked at it in the past, it was brand new. They were still getting a few bugs out of the system, and I wanted to give it a little bit of time. Well, a brand new release has just dropped, and so we want to go ahead and have a look at what this is going to look like. So obviously, when we're talking about an Arch-based distribution, Arch has had classically a reputation of being difficult to install and to use and to manage. And we've seen a lot of Linux distributions come up like Endeavor OS and Arch Labs, Arco Linux, that have really done a lot to solve that problem, to bring Arches more to the masses. And Garuda stands on the shoulders of these giants and brings some other amazing features to the table. We have simple click services management that can be managed on the fly instead of just on system setup. We have a lot of gaming features, like advanced gaming features that me as a non-gamer couldn't tell you what half of them do, but hey, you guys will know exactly what it is when you see the screen I'm going to show you. We're going to talk about an Arch system that has stable backup system based on the same principle that NixOS uses, utilizing dual imaging and things like that, although it's not in fact specifically a containerized or an immutable system, but they're using a similar approach to make sure an update doesn't brick your system. And we're going to be talking about available software, sort of at the click of a button. Turns out there's a couple of caveats there. We're going to go ahead and talk about that. Stick around to the very end of the video. I'm going to tell you the 3 Arch systems that I have used in production and what I thought about them. So let's go ahead and get into this. First, we'll talk about the basic aspects here. And I do want to go ahead and just walk through the website really quick. You can head on over here. Our basic aspects of the system is, as they describe on the bottom of their page, they're using the Zen Linux kernel. So the Zen kernel, the whole Linux kernel, to understand, is a really big back and forth. It's a monster behemoth that can handle anything and everything. But there's some stuff bringing to server racks and such that the basic desktop user is never going to need. And so the Zen kernel has come out, which has streamline the kernel for desktop, media, gaming, just the basic systems of installing a Linux distribution on your PC and using it. And because of this, it produces a very good, streamlined, fast, and appropriate system. So we're using that. We're also using the ButterFS file system. And the ButterFS file system is a newer file system. It has ZSTD compression in it. And this will give it the ability to run snapshots. So when you're doing an update, it will take a snapshot of the system. So in the event of an Arch destroying the system, ButterFS allows them to say, hey, we'll just boot the snapshot instead that we know works because this is what you booted into before the system update went. Kind of like that Windows restore point. Unlike the time shift approach that Linux Mint uses, it uses an approach that's more like the Nix. Okay, we have a couple different booting partitions here. It just behaves a little bit differently. We also have a GUI for system management, which makes a lot of the things really easy to work with. And inside of your GUI, I gotta find it there. Inside your GUI, you have way more options than I've seen in any other, particularly Arch distribution, but even any other distribution in general. Like turning on and turning off printer options, like printer servers on the fly, is actually quite amazing. So we'll kind of talk about that. We're using the Calamaris installer here. And with the Calamaris installer, very easy installation. I have noted a couple small issues occasionally with the installer. Sometimes it fails to format the disk. When that happens, I usually just boot the distro with a live key, format the drive into an empty space, and then run the Calamares installer again. That solves that problem. I don't get that a lot. It just happens. One of the cool things about Garuda is it does have some of the more unique theming. It's not just another distro using the modern flat icons or the skeuomorphic icons. It really brings to us a different system theme. Of course, you can change that, but part of what they're doing is very, very systemy. It's kind of neat how it goes. And also, if you are a really stickler about your bash options, we do have a variety of bash options. We'll see that when we get into the system settings and management. So overall, though, the system does have a lot of fun and good features inside of this. Now, we did mention it's a Zen kernel at the time of this video. With the latest, we're running 6.5.9, and so obviously that's going to be out of date if you watch this video a few months down the road. But overall, I'm finding that Garuda Linux is quite incredible. So first thing we're going to do here is let me boot up the box, and then we'll go ahead and walk through some of the more standout features that the system happens to have. So we're going to go ahead and come on in here. We have our shutdown. We have a restart. We do have the advanced options as well, which is going to allow us to access any of those snapshots. Since I just started this, we don't have any of those snapshots, but we'll show you where that's all managed as well. So you can see we're running the Cinnamon desktop environment. There are a variety of desktop environments available to you. And Cinnamon is one of the community supported ones. There's also KDE, which is community supported. There's a few Windows compositors. We have a GNOME, we have XFCE. So there's a variety of options that you have for your desktop environments. But when we get into here, just looking at some of the standout features that it has, the first thing we want to look at is our web browser. So our web browser on this is FireDragon, which is unique to Garuda Linux. FireDragon, though, is a fork of LibreWolf, meaning it is the privacy-hardened Firefox. So it's going to be based on the Firefox core. So if you're used to Firefox, you'll be used to this. But since it is based on LibreWolf, the LibreWolf code hardens Firefox quite a bit. A lot more private, a lot more secure. Now, if I remember correctly, let's just search for something. So let's just go ahead and search for something here. And the default search option, they have changed this to be a CRX instance. I thought they did anyway. Let's see. Yep. So you can see they're running a CRX instance on their own server. So when you use the search, if you're not going to be doing any customization to the search engine, it's one of the first distros I've seen that actually changes this to not be like DuckDuckGo or Google or something. We have a private instance of CRX hosted on their own servers on a privacy-hardened web browser. So you have a lot of really good functions. Of course, I just tried to exit the thing up in the top right-hand corner. All of your exit buttons are on the top left, like in Mac. So there are a few styling changes I'm not a huge fan of, but I actually really like these bright, vibrant colors. I actually kind of dig it. It's more retro-ish. It's not the skeuomorphic, but it's not the modern, boring flat either. And that's really why I love the theming. Of course, the dragonized version of, I think, XFCE is totally awesome. Now, FireDragon as the web browser is very nice, but we also have the variety of different tools. So inside of your welcome screen here, you have the option of your setup assistant. We have our Garuda assistant, Garuda Gamer, our settings manager, network assistant, boot options. We have the ButterFS assistant. Now, this used to be inside the Garuda assistants. They took this out so that other people can utilize this application. So they're doing a lot to contribute up to other people that want to use ButterFS and take advantage of the snapshot system that they're doing. This is why they've done that. So there is also the setup assistant. Now, they do say the setup assistant might be buggy in a virtual machine where we're in. What I have actually found is that there is a buggy component to it. However, it appears to be more related than to an Arch package conflict than anything else. We're going to talk more about that in part 3 when we talk about a few of the issues that I found. But first, I do want to talk about the assistant here, because this does really give us a lot of the fun factors we have. So we have the update system. We have the refresh mirror list, refresh key rings. This is important. this is the biggest problem I sometimes find in running Endeavor OS. Is in Endeavor OS, sometimes the key rings don't want to update themselves, and you have to manually update them in the terminal. It's not difficult, but it is something that I got to look it up every once in a while because I only have to do it every few months. You can reinstall all packages if the updates were blocked. This is an Arch issue. If the updates were interrupted and you have a database lock, you'd usually have to go into the file system and just manually delete the database lock button. Boom, click of a button, it's gone. You can remove orphans, you can clear caches, and then look at this. You can reset package configurations for a variety of different things. VLC, MPV, LibreOffice, Starship, SM Player. So all of these options here, these are going to be config files that are found inside of your home directory that otherwise you might have to manually do. So if I just go ahead and hit my Control-H to show all files, you can see these are really those config files that you'll find. Inside of here, you'll see these. So oftentimes if some error in a software application, it might very well be a config file. So instead of having to manually come into here and do that, we do have a single click of a button to reset all of the config files. This is the one that has been launched into a separate tool. We're going to come back to that one in a bit. System components. This guy here is something that's like, wow, you actually have this on changing stuff on the fly. So the way it defaults, it doesn't have Samba support. So this would allow you over network sharing. It doesn't have printer support. It doesn't have support for scanners. But you can come in here and say, well, I need a printer, I need a scanner, and I need to share files. And then you can hit your apply button. And this is now going to apply all of the features that you need in order to do that. So you can do, here's right now we're running Pipewire support. You can go with Pulse Audio or ALSA support. We have Jack support over here. And you have various input methods. We have firewall stuff, so UFW, but you can see it's not enabled. I can go ahead and click this and enable the firewall. These functions here are totally, absolutely amazing. So I might go ahead and do this, not having Bluetooth on this particular guy here. You can see GStreamer codecs. You can see user video groups. You can see the network manager is turned on. So these are all options that we can do. Over here, we can choose our various shells, so bash, fish, sh, zsh. We have a variety of different options that we have inside of here. Here's performance tweaks, power saving tweaks. So if you're running on a laptop, you might turn on your power saving. In order to do that, you can turn on guest user support or turn it off. All of these are systems that we have. Here's the specification for our particular computer and other diagnostics. So inside of this assistant, there is a lot of various items. We're going to go ahead and close that without updating anything. We're not going to wait for stuff to update right here. Now, your ButterFS assistant. This guy here is what will manage your system snapshots. So you can come over here and we can see what our mount points are. We can see what our frequency is. So you can do weekly. You can also scrub weekly. You can defrag weekly. And over here is your snapper settings. So you can run some manual configurations and things. And then over here, this will actually show us if we happen to have other snapshots. Everything in our snapshots is going to appear over here. You can refresh one. You can delete one. If you know something's bad or it's old, you know that, then you're going to be able to easily delete that. So, and let's see, here's your subvolumes, and this just gives us our information. So right now, 79%. Our disk is pretty full right now, so we have to be careful with running our system snapshots over here. Inside of your individual settings manager, this is where you can adjust your Linux kernels. We can see the default Linux kernel is that 659 Zen kernel. So if there were other kernels here, you can do that. You might see other kernels come in on subsequent system updates. If you're running this for a while, you might see other options in here. You could go back and delete some of those. If you need other language packs or hardware configuration, you can go ahead and manage all that kind of stuff over there. So some of you guys who are more into your gamers will really like the Garuda Gamer option. This is really nice in that it has a lot of different containers and emulators. So you can see this is basically your emulators, even Wageroid. So if you wanted to play around with utilizing Android apps on your phone, you can go ahead and use Waydroid and do that over here. Here's RetroArch. Here's DOSBox. I mean, there's all sorts of fun stuff in here. So there's a variety of different emulators for different purposes. We have a variety of different games you can install as well. Here's our Hedge Wars. We have our Tux carts in here somewhere. I saw it earlier. So you have a variety. There you go. Super Tux cart. Here's Armageddon Advance, Cube 2. So you see we have a lot of different gamer options over here. And over here, you can install Steam, either native or runtime. We have our Game Hub. We have our Lutris over here. We have Wine Tricks. So I really like this option where nothing is installed by default, but you do have a lot of different features that you can install. There's even things over here like OBS or VLC that might be good for those of us YouTubers that need to install those without having to figure out, what to get it installed with. So that is really some of the standout features. Everything else is going to be your basic Linux system. Here's your chaotic AUR. The chaotic AUR is this is the specific version of the Arch user repository that they have, and they're using this one because all of the packages in here, from my understanding, I haven't researched it a ton, but to my understanding, everything in here is already compiled, so you don't need to make or compile things. You just need to install them from this particular AUR. And so those are some of the standout features. Now, there are a couple bugs. It's not a perfect system. So let's go ahead and talk about what some of those happen to be. Now, the first big problem I have is in this particular build, the Cinnamon build, I don't actually have any way to install software in the GUI. Pace will give us information on our software repositories. Now, the other versions of Garuda are either going to come with Pamuk, which of course is absent, or Octopi, which is also absent. So here on running the Cinnamon version, if I wanted to install something, I'd have to install like Pamuk or install something directly from a software repository. Basically, you have to manage all of the software inside of the terminal on this particular flavor. They did mention, though, on their site that other flavors of this are going to have one of those too. Also, when I got into our initial settings screen there, when I got into that initial settings screen, I tried to push the system updates, basically running through the first setup, the setup assistant. That's going to do a number of things. It's going to run a full system update. It's going to clear packages. It's going to clear a database lock. It's going to resort the mirrors, and it's going to run a full system update. I was getting an error. Now, they do say on their website that running this in a VirtualBox, the settings assistant may actually provide you an error. So with that, is that really what my problem was? No, it actually was a problem with a package that is now in conflict. And this is something that you encounter oftentimes in Arch systems in general. For example, I just updated my main production Manjaro machine, and there is a package in conflict. I was like, I'm going to mess with this right now. So I did a little bit of research. It turns out that one package is now obsolete, but the system doesn't want to automatically delete it, and then it detects a dependency conflict, and so it won't do anything until I manually delete the package. That is a similar situation that I'm seeing. It doesn't appear to be related to the virtual machine as much as a conflict in the Arch packaging itself. That is hopefully going to be something that is going to be out there. The next thing is actually Snap and Flatpak support. They just don't support it. They say, you know what? Almost every bit of software you can find in either Snap or Flatpak is available, if not in the Arch repository, in the chaotic AUR. So they said, officially, we're not going to get involved in the game of what's better, Flatpak, Snaps, whatever else. They just don't include any of them. That might be an advantage. That might be a disadvantage. I decided to put them in my lacking features just because, hey, it's a feature that's lacking, right? Snap or Flatpak support out of the box. Not that you can't install them. Of course you can, but it's just something that you do. I will note, if you install Pamuk, it might actually enable support for both of those out of the box because Pamuk does tend to do that. The next main downside is this is a high disk space distro. I had to create a new box in my virtual machine for this because all my virtual machine boxes are 25 gig to save disk space. That is enough for most systems. This one required at least 40 gig. Why is it doing this? Mostly because of those Btrfs snapshots, which means if you have the disk space to run this, it is a much safer Arch distribution because it has a smaller chance of killing itself on an update, as Arch has been sometimes known to do. However, that being said, if you do have a system with a small disk and you're concerned about disk space usage, Garuda might be one you want to pass on for now, at least until you upgrade your hard drive to something bigger. Because of that, it is a good reason for being a high disk space usage, but it's just something you want to be aware of. So that is the features I found lacking. Now the bonus content. I told you that I have used 3 Arch systems in production. I want to talk about what those were. The first is Arch Labs. Now, Arch Labs earlier this year, around June, was discontinued, so you're not going to run Arch Labs anymore, but it is something that is out there. I played around with that. I really liked Arch Labs because I started using that before any major Arch scripts were out. I think ArchFi was brand new. No other easy-to-install Arch system was out there. It was still the meme. Arch is just the hard Linux to install outside of the insanity that is, oh man, Gentoo. There you go. But Arch Labs allowed me to do a script and had a few nice options where I could swap the kernel or I could do a couple other little things. And that is something that I liked. Arch is actually the distro where I used to, if you go back to the early days of the channel, I used to install a different distribution on my media PC every month and run it for a month. However, I stopped doing that because I just needed a PC that was a much more stable, that basically is a collecting ground for the basic work that I sometimes need to do. And so I stopped distro hopping on Arch Labs. I used it for a while, and at one point in time, I switched over to Endeavor OS because Endeavor OS had a lot more internal options. The Endeavor OS did have an option that Garuda doesn't have, and that is the ability to even choose a different kernel on install. You could choose the LTS, you could choose the Zen, you could choose the default kernel, or you can choose the advanced hardware stack kernel. All those were options that you did have on that original system. Those are no longer there. But overall, I found that the other system tools Endeavor OS has were very good. At the time, they were some of the best feature packages. However, even those are now becoming obsolete in line of Garuda. So if I were to be installing a brand new Arch system today, I would probably choose Garuda Linux because of all of those extra configuration options. And, you know, I just need to spend some time figuring out what that package conflict is on install. No big deal. But it didn't really interfere with installing it, just updating the system, and it was really one package. But the system did update everything else around that one package. So that was good. And the third Arch system that I have used in production has been Manjaro. Of course, I use Manjaro on my Raspberry Pi 4B for my work computer. And I have a whole video about that. You can check it out. And I used Manjaro there, not because I was in love with Manjaro as much as at the time I built that system, which is almost 3 years ago, Manjaro was the most complete, best working distribution to put on a Raspberry Pi for a full web designer's production rig. And I'm still using it to this day, several years later. Although I will note that the latest KDE update, the migration to the new version, really slowed it down a bit. So I'm actually been thinking about switching it over to XFCE for a while. Anyway, I think it'll probably run better on system resources doing that. But those are the 3 distributions I have used in production on Arch. They are all very good. Looking at all of these various options, Endeavor OS is still good. They did just release a new version. I'll tell you though, Garuda Linux, I'm liking what I am seeing. So thanks for watching this video. If you do like the video, like, share, comment the video. Definitely help us get support in the algorithm. This channel is deeply suppressed by the tubies, so please get out the word about the channel again. You can have a look also on the website, switchedtolinux.com. Head on over to /support, and you can see all the ways you can help support the channel through our Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals pages. You can see all of those. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.